WireMock Cloud now has a Claude plugin, which consists of a collection of skills and a couple of MCP servers, including the main WireMock Cloud MCP server. The main skill in the set is one that allows you to create a complete simulation of an API that's fully stateful. And I'm going to demonstrate this using the WhatsApp for Business APIs as the API that we wish to simulate, since this seems to be quite a popular one to integrate with. So I'm going to head over to my console and start up Claude. If I say /MCP, we can see that we've got the main WireMock MCP server, and we've also got this Arazo runner server. So this allows us to take an Arazo description, so this is an Open API workflow description, and run that workflow against an endpoint. And this is important for having a repeatable process for verifying an API that's been generated, and in some cases for producing recordings as well. And if I inspect my plugins, then we can see installed we have a WireMock Cloud plugin. So this contains all of the skills that we need, including the one I just described. So let's get started by saying build API simulation. So this is a skill that can be initialized with this as a kind of / command. So I can say build API simulation, and I'll say WhatsApp for Business. So Claude is capable of going and searching the web, all that kind of thing, so it can go and find documentation. Hopefully it will find this on its own. If not, I can give it a little nudge and say, here's the documentation URI. Let's go for the messaging folder. I'm going to say no sandbox available at the moment. So if I do say there's a sandbox, there's a bit of extra setup involved. I need to go and register for an API key, drop it into an authenticator file. This allows the process to use recording as part of its information gathering, which can produce some better quality responses in some cases, but it takes quite a lot longer, tends to iterate a bit more. So for the sake of brevity at the moment, we're going to go with the non-sandbox approach, which is we'll just gather information from documentation, open APIs, Postman collections, anything that describes the API, and we'll generate the mock responses that way. I'm going to say, yes, I want it to be stateful, and let's go for full API coverage. Be ambitious. So I've submitted these answers. So this is the thing that the skill gives us, that sort of workflow at the beginning where it asks a set of structured questions. And it's now going to go off and find the documentation. And may or may not ask me some further questions. Will probably ask me for some permissions to be approved. After a few iterations of that, it will go off and start generating. At that point, we'll pause and we'll return when it's completed, because this process can take sort of 20 to 30 minutes depending on the size of the API. So Claude's now generated a plan and is now working its way through those plan steps, and by the end of it should have produced a fully working simulated API. Okay, so after some churning away, Claude has now finished doing what I asked it to. It's taken about 25 minutes. As you can see, it's provided a summary of what it's done in terms of generating Open API, the Arazo workflows used to do the testing, and then it's done a final validation. It's worth explaining briefly what the validation checks actually consist of. So this is the reason we have the Arazo workflows, primarily so we can use WireMock's validation feature, which is essentially contract testing using Open API to confirm that the API simulation actually conforms to the contract. So what we do is we turn validation on, we run the Arazo workflows through, and then Claude via the MCP server can pull the validation log and check to see whether there are any errors. And the skill is set up to say don't finish until there are 0 errors. So now this is the case. It's written a load of files into our local project that we can commit to Git. But also it's created this API simulation in the cloud. So if we go back to WireMock Cloud now, we can see we've got this WhatsApp Business Cloud API, which wasn't there before. You can see it's generated a set of stubs, and it's also enabled the documentation portal, so we can go and have a look at that. So this is based off of the Open API description that it generated, and we should be able to go and make a test request using these documentation pages and get a realistic looking response. So let's put a phone number in, and we make a request, and we get a plausible looking response. And that's about it. So we've produced quite a complex API here in a very automated fashion, in a very hands-off way. As I mentioned, there is an approach to this where we can use recording as well if we have a sandbox available, which can further improve the realism of the responses. Many of these stubs are stateful, so you can see here it's using the state operations and the templating to produce dynamic responses based on captured state. So this enhances the realism of this API and means that you can run tests that are multi-step workflows that require state to be preserved between individual steps.